Deion Sanders, Eddie Robinson, a handshake and a denied hug had the sports world going crazy, and FAMU won a game because there were games played on Saturday over South Carolina State for their first road win of the year. Oh yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one. Daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. You got to understand, guys. This Deion Sanders, Eddie Robinson Jr. handshake, hug, denial, it's not just a SWAC thing. It's not just an HBCU thing. I follow a lot of Saints people on Twitter. I'm a big participant, or big watcher, really, of Saints Twitter. I got people on Saints Twitter who ain't got nothing to do with HBCUs talking about this. Deion Sanders is huge, and that's the reason this is really a thing. And I'm going to try to take Deion Sanders out to really make my point in the sense that everybody has an opinion on this. I have a show. This is where I voice my opinion. So I did a little something on Twitter and gave my little 2 cents. But this is where I really get to it. And my opinion on this is we're so obsessed with trying to have a villain of every story. It's like every single story needs a bad guy. And if you're here to hear me pick a side and say, I'm Team Robinson or I'm Team Sanders, I apologize sincerely because I'm not here to pick a side. And to me, when I put myself in the shoes of each of these men, I easily understand why they acted the way they did. And I think both of their reactions are valid. If I'm Deion Sanders and I think it's love, I walk up showing love. I come to embrace you and you put your hand in my chest. Oh, well, now it's an issue. Yes, I'm going to shove you. Yes, I'm going to push you off me because that's disrespectful to me. I feel like you just disrespected me by putting your hand in my chest. If I'm Eddie Robinson and I have a problem with everything you've been saying leading up to the game and some of your antics before the game, don't hug me. I'm not here for the fake love. I'm not finna crucify Eddie Robinson for not faking. Both of these reactions to me are valid, and I hate that this is such a big deal. The true issue is the post-game press conference. That's the issue. But we have to discuss this as well. I have a responsibility to discuss the whole thing, you know? I've seen a couple of things that I do want to clear up, though. I saw people call Eddie Robinson disrespectful and unprofessional. I think both of those adjectives are inaccurate ways to describe Eddie Robinson's behavior on Saturday. I don't think those are fair. I'm not here to crucify what Sanders did. I'm not here to crucify what Robinson did. I think both are right. But to call Robinson unprofessional, the professionalism was going up and shaking his hand. The hug is extra. That's not professional. The professionalism stops with shaking hands. The hug is extra. Disrespectful. If I don't rock with you, why would I want to hug you? Here's the thing. I think that so many people can't understand what Robinson did or have a problem with what Robinson did because they refuse to try to understand Robinson's mindset. Remember when I said I'm going to try to take Deion Sanders out? I have to do the same thing with Eddie Robinson. I'm going to put it to you. If somebody you don't rock with, but you're in a place where you have to be professional, and they want to shake your hand and come in for a hug, are you going to do it? That's up to you. I'm not going to tell you. Me personally, I don't want to hug you if I don't rock with you. I feel disrespected by the things that you said. I'm not going to do it. And here's the thing. Deion Sanders did trash talk. I think he even admitted that he trash talked. Well, in a lot of trash talk, things are based in a little bit of disrespect. And you can't really determine how somebody's going to take that. There are so many people who would just write it off as trash talk, whatever. Eddie Robinson didn't. Eddie Robinson took a lot of those things personal, clearly. You can't tell somebody how to handle that. You can't tell somebody what to be offended by. When we look at this situation, Deion Sanders had a reason for every single thing that Eddie Robinson was disrespected by, or felt offended by, I should say. Also, you don't have to have malice in your heart to offend or disrespect somebody. The problem they take with your sentiments does not mean that's how you meant it. So it also doesn't mean that Deion Sanders had malice. I don't think he did. I genuinely don't. So when Deion Sanders comes out and says, we got here late, so we were running, wasn't about to go do that. I don't usually go talk to people at half or at midfield. I always go around the field. That's my ritual. All of those things are explanations for things that Robinson had a problem with, but Robinson did not know that. With the information presented to him, maybe he acts different. But he didn't know it, so to him, walking through my huddle, not saying anything before the game, when you already made comments before, remind yourself that he is already on edge to throw the little fire in there. You hear the Alabama State fans or players cursing at Coach Sanders. I'm sure that came from the idea that Coach Robinson was heated and ticked off during the whole week of practice. You know, I don't condone that. That's wrong. That's wrong. I do not condone that at all. But I also think it's separate from this. So, mind you, I think the one thing that Sanders didn't really have a good explanation for is the fact that he's just selling a game. And that's probably the idea that he said this was like a money game. The idea that Alabama State invited them for homecoming only to sell tickets because you know you're going to get your butt whooped, but you just want to sell tickets. Kind of like when FCS opponents or FCS games are played against FBS opponents. He compared it to that. I'm sorry. I don't know how you couldn't realize how that can be taken disrespectfully. Yeah, it's trash talk. I was just watching the Khabib Nurmagomedov fight versus Conor McGregor. In that fight, Conor told Khabib, it's just business. That's very similar to what Deion said. I was selling the game. But here's the thing. You sit here and compare yourself to a money game. Say you're trying to get us to sell tickets because we bring fans, and they do. I get why you say that, but you say that. They're going to internalize that a certain way. And then after the game, you say, when's the last time they sold out this place? You double down on it. I understand why he took that disrespectfully. Now, what I think was maybe the worst, or at least on par, right? Also, remember, I think Deion is probably is selling a game and is talking trash because I think he is a trash talker. I love trash talk, so I don't have a problem with trash talk. But I do understand that some people can't get down with it. We just have to remember that. But I think that one thing Robinson said that crossed the line is that Deion Sanders ain't SWAC. I firmly disagree with that. Deion Sanders is SWAC. To me, coaching in the SWAC, playing in the SWAC, attending in the SWAC, heavily rooting for the team in the SWAC. You're SWAC. You're SWAC. Maybe the latter is the least of the bunch, but you're SWAC. Eddie Robinson is more SWAC than others. He played here. He's now coaching here. Yeah, like he's born and raised here. There's people who are raised in the city. There's people who are born and raised in the city. And I think there's a slight difference between the two. But there's people who will claim a city. Some even claim it as a second home. Just because you weren't entrenched and raised up in the HBCU culture does not mean that you're not SWAC. I still think that Hugh Jackson is SWAC because he's the coach of Grambling. So I think that's firmly incorrect in my opinion. But why would he say it? What is he really trying to say? To me, what he's really trying to say is Deion Sanders is using Jackson State as a stepping stool. I think he alluded to it when he said, I pray that he doesn't have a head coaching job at a Power 5. I think he alluded to that. So with all that being the case, I get what he's trying to say, and I think he's wrong. You don't actually know that, man, so I'm not going to speak on his intentions like that. I highly doubt that Deion Sanders gave him the information that, hey, man, I'm just trying to get here and just level up. You may think it, but it's the fact that Eddie Robinson is a coach that really surprised me, because I know fans have said it. I've heard it a bunch. We've all heard it. However, Eddie Robinson is a coach, and it does make me kind of curious how many coaches think that way. I don't know. I don't know how many coaches think that way. I know that there are some, but I never thought anybody would publicly come say it. But if you ask me, Deion Sanders is SWAC, and I put myself in the shoes of Eddie Robinson, I'm not going to let somebody just disrespect me and then come in for a hug. If I internalize it as disrespect, intended or not, if I internalize it as disrespect, I'm not going to embrace you with the, Obama bro hug, like he said. And if I'm Deion Sanders and I think it's love, and you put your hand in my chest, I'm going to take an issue with that. But enough of my spiel. Let's get into the actual actual football play, and we're going to talk about some quarterback play as we end today's episode of Locked On HBCU. But before we do that, I would like to tell you about SimpliSafe. Over the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen SimpliSafe Home Security to protect their house. Now tell me what companies you know getting that with lackluster service. It doesn't exist. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. And I know because I use SimpliSafe in my own home. They protect you with cutting-edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. And here's why I love it. I can adjust things from my phone if I forget. And trust me, I do forget. I'm a very forgetful person. So I can adjust things from my phone. I can view my security system from my home. And also, if they can't reach me and there's problems, they're going to make sure that the authorities still get there in a timely fashion, even if I can't answer in a timely fashion. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege. Save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege to learn more. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. As we keep on rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day. Every day, and the word of the day is spiel, and it means a fast speech, often one that has been rehearsed or given before, that is usually intended to get someone to buy something or to agree with something. That's the denotative, right? I'm using a connotative way. Look, I'm done with my little spiel, my little rant. I'm done with that. We're on to some actual game action, and that's South Carolina State versus Florida A&M. FAMU was able to get their first road victory of the year, and in my opinion, the two best players on the field were the linebackers for each team. BJ Davis for South Carolina State and Isaiah Major for FAMU. A lot of people would have expected to be Isaiah Land, but he went down with an injury so early in the game. But truth be told, if he would have came back, I don't even know if I would have noticed him, because that's how much Isaiah Major was jumping off the screen. This was an overall stressful game. It looked like FAMU had it in the bag, and then they didn't. And then it looked like they were going to lose, but then they didn't. It was just so crazy. But overall, the one thing that stuck, and the one thing that I really was able to walk away saying, the linebackers were the best players on the field, but they affected the game in two different ways. When you look at FAMU's Major, he was like the grass on the field everywhere. When you look at Major, anytime South Carolina State wanted to run the ball, what they were able to see, they saw the grass on the field and they saw Major. The only difference is Major was wearing a FAMU jersey. That's the only difference between him and the grass on the field, you know, because that's how impactful he was. He had 13 tackles on the day. He had 2.5 tackles for a loss. Kendall Flowers only had 12 carries for 31 yards and a long of 10. He wasn't getting anything going. And this is a guy who, against Bethune-Cookman, had over 100 yards, and I feel like he could be an engine. But you stop them from running the ball, and I think South Carolina State is going to struggle. I think that's something that will continue throughout the year until Corey Fields in the passing game gets more consistent. But we're going to talk about that in the last segment of the day, so let me hold off and not get too far, right? But it didn't matter. He was everywhere. I just felt like this player was so impactful. And it wasn't just in the running game. That wasn't it. It was also in the pass game. So they had a screen pass that he ran up like a heat-seeking missile and ferociously took down the running back. It was a great play, and it wasn't in the run, but it stopped them. I think it was either second and long or third and long that they threw that screen pass and just trying to get up some yards. So I think it might have been second, where they were just trying to get some yards to maybe either attempt a field goal or make an easier third down. Major wasn't having none of that. I thought he played great, man. And he also had a sack showing his proficiency blitzing, and then also had a pass breakup. So he was doing everything, but his most damage was shown in the running game. And then when you look at BJ Davis for South Carolina State, he didn't accumulate the amount of stats. So he didn't have the abundance of stats as Major did with the 13 tackles and 2.5 tackles for a loss. But the two plays that really jumped off the screen might have been the two biggest plays of the day. And matter of fact, I'd go so far to say, if South Carolina State won this game, those would have been the biggest plays of the game, no matter what. I think that he had arguably the two biggest plays of the game. But if South Carolina State completes their comeback, I don't think there's any doubt. BJ Davis's interceptions were the biggest plays of the game, and they were the best plays of the game, in my opinion, even though they didn't lead to a victory, a comeback win. You look at two of those plays, he's about a yard, maybe 2 yards away from the line of scrimmage, jumps up, super athletic, destroys the notion that us linebackers ain't got no hands. And also saying us linebackers is a terrible habit. I got to break it eventually. But overall, I thought that BJ Davis was a stud. And every single time I watched him, he pops up, whether it's in coverage, whether it's in getting interceptions, right? Because he wasn't in coverage on these plays. He was just very close to the line of scrimmage. Think a defensive end who, instead of batting down a pass, intercepts it. And how, whoa, that was a great play. He did that 2 times. And they both led to touchdowns, whether it's run support. BJ Davis always shows me something. It's one of those things where if I knew nothing about the team, didn't know who he was, I just sat down and watched the South Carolina State game, I would ask, who is that 5 guy? Who is BJ Davis? Because he's that good. He had game-changing plays and single-handedly turned the momentum in the direction of South Carolina State. I genuinely believe that South Carolina State does not score a point if BJ Davis does not get an interception. There was no momentum for them offensively. He gets an interception, Shaq Davis scores a touchdown. He gets an interception, Shaq Davis scores a touchdown. Those are the only points of the day. Led to 2 Shaq Davis's touchdowns. Once again, they have to find a way to get Shaq Davis. I'm just going to call him Shaq now. You got to find a way to get Shaq involved more consistently. I don't want to see the total amount of yards that he had. I purposely did not look for that number because it was based off of big plays. Until those 2 touchdown drives, I think he had like 1 target, 1 catch. He was not getting targeted enough. I don't know how many targets it was, but it wasn't enough. He didn't feel like enough of the game plan. And then when you get that interception by BJ, then Shaq comes in and he has 2 catches on the drive. One's a touchdown where the defender is in perfect coverage, but he's just better. That's what I need. He's just better. He shows himself to be a talented wide receiver. And honestly, that last play of the game might have been different if he hadn't caught cramps the play before. But you go to the second touchdown, a bomb right after the interception. He shows himself. But the total yardage, the reason I didn't want to look it up, because it's all based off of a big play. You have to get it to where Shaq Davis's stats are not based on a big play. I said that his 6 for 127 wasn't impactful for real against North Carolina A&C. However, it was spread out. That's the type of consistency I need. Every Shaq Davis play doesn't need to be either a dagger or a comeback play. It can just be a part of the game. He can have big time plays in the second quarter. They don't have to be fourth quarter plays. So that's something I think needs to really change, because when he popped up, it's like, whoa, how does this guy not get in the game or not get stats? Like, what's going on? Why isn't he being targeted? Why isn't he being almost force-fed the ball? I'd rather him be force-fed the ball than, I don't want to force-feed him, so now he's not going to get the ball at all. You're taking out one of your best players. So we have to fix that. If you're South Carolina State, you have to fix that. But overall, on the last play of the game, or the last offensive play of the game, you weren't able to get it done. And the reason is because there was a miscommunication, which was very common between Corey Fields and his wide receivers on the day. I'm going to talk about that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. But first, I want to tell you about BetOnline. I should be wearing my Saints shirt. However, I'm recording this on Sunday. I'm about to drop it like right after the Sunday night game. But I had to show some love to my boy Eddie Guerrero. I'm wearing his I'm Your Poppy shirt. So go to BetOnline, though, because it still is Sunday and you still got some action. My Saints won. What's your team? Did you put some money down on them? If you did you put it on BetOnline? If you did, you probably won, because they're going to give you the news. They're going to give you all the information that you need to try to win. How many places are you going to go where they actually put the information in front of you to help you make more money? I ain't got nothing else to say. I lied. Word to Eddie Guerrero. But anyway, you got the basketball season. You got combat sports. Everything you can need is all on BetOnline. The fastest and easiest place to wager on all of your sports needs. BetOnline, where the game starts. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I'm done channeling my inner Eddie Guerrero. I'm just going to finish talking about this game. But I felt as if Corey Fields had a bad and an unfortunate day. That's how I felt about Corey Fields. I want to go through his 3 interceptions and then the last play of the game. So we're going to focus on 4 plays in this South Carolina State FAMU game to really tell the story of how his day was. And I said it was bad. It was unfortunate. That first interception was bad. It didn't look like it was tipped. It was close. I know somebody had their hand up, but I don't think it was tipped. It was just an off-target slant pass, and B.J. Bowler picked it off. It was a bad throw. And that was common throughout the day. Not every bad throw ends up being intercepted, but there was bad throws on the day where you have a guy open, but you got to hit him. You got to hit him, man. And that's the reason that Coach Pugh was talking about maybe playing two quarterbacks, and he did a little bit. Corey Fields played most of the game, but maybe after a performance like this, you go more into the two quarterback well. Maybe even have a one quarterback that's just not Corey Fields. I just felt as if he has not played up to par in most of the games that I've watched. And this one definitely was the case where plays sometimes were open. I'm not going to place them all on him. We're going to get to that as we keep going. But he definitely had his fair share in there. And the reason I say not all of it is on him, because sometimes it was just unfortunate situations. Like his second interception, the wide receiver slipped. He had already thrown the ball. The wide receiver slipped on the route. So now, as a good DB who was already kind of there, not like on him for real, but it's kind of there, it's looking like, well, you just threw a ball right to him. But the truth of the matter is the wide receiver slipped, and that's not on him. And I felt as if there was times when he had good passes. Pass might not have been right in the chest, but every pass isn't going to be right in the chest. That's just not the case. Sometimes the ball's going to be over here. Sometimes the ball's going to be over here. Might be a little high, might be a little low. But they're catchable passes that I felt like they had a case of the drops. Corey Fields was not helped by his wide receivers on multiple occasions on Saturday. So I don't want to make it seem like Corey Fields is garbage. Corey Fields is this. No! Corey Fields has had a rough season thus far. But I do not feel like people have really helped him. But luckily, they're going into conference time. They're 1-4. They were 1-4 last year. Coach Pugh is probably preaching that message. You don't want to be there, but you were there last year and you know how to battle back. Now it's time for conference season. Then interception number 3 was kind of a mix of both. It was kind of both of those in there where it was tipped. Tips happen. But I don't think it was a great pass, But for the record, for those who watched the game and maybe are complaining about that last pass, it was tipped. And that, to my knowledge, in college as well, I know it's in the professional leagues, but in college, that just negates pass interference. Once the ball is tipped, you could freaking tackle a wide receiver for all you care. It doesn't matter anymore. The ball was tipped. So there's no PI on that, but it was a bump, right? So the wide receiver gets bumped, the ball's tipped, and it ends up being an interception. But I don't think it was a smart pass anyway. I don't think it was a good decision. Of course, when it gets tipped, you don't know the trajectory of the ball, but I just don't think it was a good decision to throw that pass. And then you look at the last play of the game, it seemed as if there was a miscommunication. The wide receiver ran an angle route out of the slot. Just for a quick reference of what an angle route is, it's like a less than sign. So you run to the point, bounce out to the inside, or you cut back into the inside. Well, Corey Fields threw the ball to the point. Somebody didn't know the play. I think Corey Fields maybe felt like he was getting heated up a little bit, so he threw it, but he could have sat in the pocket and waited. So when you see the ball and it's thrown well behind the man, that's because the wide receiver had broke down, didn't settle down, but he broke down to cut inside at the point. Remember, we're talking about a less than sign. So you're like this if you're on YouTube or, boom, there we go. It's like this. He threw it right here. This it. I don't know how I'm acting. There we go. So he basically threw it right here. But the wide receiver was running back inside. If I'm doing this well, I'm live. Like, I ain't gonna lie. This is cold if I'm like really, if y'all really understand what I'm saying. The wide receiver started right here, ran. This is where the ball was thrown, but he was cutting back inside. So with that being the case, the ball looks grossly underthrown. If the wide receiver had settled down, B.J. Bowler was there. All he had to do was make the tackle. Miscommunication continuously happened. Those 4 plays told the story of the day. If he wasn't throwing bad passes, the wide receivers weren't helping him out. And sometimes it was a mix of both. And then sometimes they just were not on the same page. And that was the final play. I'm not saying there should be a quarterback switch. There have been 2 quarterbacks out there, but I can't call for too many quarterback switches. I almost sound like I'm just calling for people's job just because. But overall, you need better play out of Corey Fields than he had on Saturday because that was a bad and unfortunate day. And honestly, the struggles on the passing game are the reason that they were not able to win this game, period. He almost saved himself at the end because he looked good on those 2 touchdown drives. But at the end, it was a miscommunication and just kind of a summation of how the day went for South Carolina State and Corey Fields. On tomorrow's episode, we're going to talk about homecoming because it was a rough homecoming week. It felt like almost nobody won their homecoming game this Saturday. So I got to talk about this because it was just bizarre to me. But I appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day. Every day for your second listen of the day, make sure you are checking out our conference shows like Locked On ACC, Locked On SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, and Sun Belt. Make sure you're tuned into all of those. In the meantime, in between time, if you're looking for me, you can find me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.